Welcome to the Senior View. And tonight we have a very special person with us, Attorney Kathleen Nealon. And she is such a wonderful, wonderful person. And she's here to help us tonight to decide how do we make plans with our wills, our future, who we are going to trust to help us in our later life. And she's such a valuable person in this community. Kathleen, how do you get started? When do you start thinking of making a plan?
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to impart information about something that's so important. What's interesting about where you start, it feels like it's almost an elephant in the room, and sometimes that prevents people from taking that first step. And really where you start is, what is most important for you in terms of getting your affairs in order? And I can give you a couple of suggestions. It might be a concern about leaving your spouse with a lot of undone details. It might be that you're concerned that if you become unable to make your medical decisions, you want to make sure that there's a legal document in place so you control who's making those decisions for you. It might be financial issues. You're very concerned that should I put my children's names on my bank accounts? Those, if you just think about what's most important, where you want to control the decisions, that's where you start. And it can be as simple as writing down a list. Gee, I want to make sure that if I can't make my medical decisions, I know I've got a legal document in place. What if I can't go to the bank and make deposits? It doesn't have to be overly complicated, the starting point. Okay?
Oh, I'm telling you. It is so important, isn't it? And you have to face it and do it. Because, you start feeling better once you start, you're taking care of yourself. And that's what's important, especially in today's life. When you think of court proceedings and...
Yeah. Oh. Like, we should talk a little bit about that point, about what are the consequences of not planning. And the consequences of not planning, for example, if someone hasn't done a power of attorney and you become unable to call the insurance company or call a medical billing company on one of your bills, without that power of attorney, no one else is going to be able to communicate with those entities or those vendors. And what would happen is they'd be required to go into court to get what's called a conservatorship. Invasive, time-consuming, and costly. So that's on the financial or the business end of your life, the consequence of not having that legal document in place. The consequence of not having a properly drafted healthcare proxy in place. The doctors can refuse to take any kind of medical decisions from anyone else if they don't have the legal authority to speak on your behalf when you can't speak. And the consequence there is, again, another court-invasive proceeding called a guardianship. So even if you just think about those two documents, those documents are extremely important during your lifetime. And interestingly enough, we're talking about the use of these documents when you're incapacitated, but that's where you're going to make sure you have control, because you have decided who's going to handle your financial affairs. You're deciding who you would trust to make the medical decisions you would make if you couldn't make them yourself. And then we often say the third part of a basic getting your affairs in order for an estate plan is a will, And the consequences of a will, I often have clients say, I don't need a will. My daughter is on my checking account. I've designated my son and daughter on a life insurance policy, but you don't know what might be out there to handle your estate upon your death. And it may be as simple as you want to make sure that there's a distribution of your personal belongings in a certain way, as opposed to an in-law skipping your memorial service to go to the house and take out the most prized possessions that you have. With a will, You put all of that down, and again, it doesn't have to be overly complicated, but you're making the decisions on who's going to have the legal authority to administer your estate. Another part, what's becoming very much part of a basic plan, is we get asked, should I have a trust? And I kind of have to laugh sometimes, because sometimes individuals will say, you know, my niece's bridge partner told me I need a trust. And that whole discussion of a trust can be extremely overwhelming. And the way you start that, when you opened up the show today and you said, you know, how do you start putting a plan in place? Once again, if you're considering whether or not to do a trust, that elephant in the room, oh, it's too much to think about, what do you want to accomplish by the trust? Because a trust can do certain things. A trust can avoid probate. A trust can assist in the management of your assets when you're not able to manage them. A trust can help manage the assets of your children who you feel may not be capable of inheriting such a large amount of money, and yet you certainly want them to be a beneficiary of your their inheritance, your estate. And again, a trust can lay that out. And the other benefit, I think, as you approach the whole idea of getting your hands around an estate plan and where to start, the other huge benefit is that you are going to be selecting and identifying the people who are simply going to be carrying out your instructions, so that if there are any dilemmas in your life, whether it might be a child with some special needs or a concern about a son or a daughter that isn't good with money, when you set up the plan, then it's you setting up the plan, and the person who's carrying out can say, look, I am just following the plan. I'm following the instructions that Mom left. And that can give the person who's doing the plan a great deal of comfort and reduce some stress. So.
I'm telling you. I read once that really, as we age, our lawyers really become our best friends at times, the elder care lawyer. And I agree with that. Because when you think of difficult family relationships, and people today, you know, so many children live far away, you know, and sometimes, you know, you can just feel alone, feel very much alone. And, you know, so it would be the best thing to do is to turn it over all to the lawyer. Do you have cases where you take care of, you know, let's say if somebody doesn't have a child?
Okay, all right.
You know, how does this work out?
How does that? We certainly have served, I call myself sometimes a surrogate daughter. Okay, so in response to your comment about whether you're alone or you have children who are long distance, I did just finish up a fairly complicated situation where a husband and wife needed to be transitioned from their apartment to assisted living and then the nursing home. Fortunately, they had a very good advocate in their daughter, but she was 2,500 miles away. She would fly out, inspect the different places, then we'd meet at my office, and we would talk through the issues associated with what decision to be made on behalf of her parents. And because the elder law aspect is more than just healthcare proxies and powers of attorney, it has to do with how is your long-term care going to be financed. And these kids are starting sometimes with a huge vacuum of information, but they can still serve as the fiduciary, and we're just part of the team advancing and facilitating a plan for the parents. Again, a plan that the parents would have been able to make, but their daughter is sort of the team captain. And then the attorney and the accountant is at the table as part of the team, advocating, very importantly, for their best interests. To the other point, when someone doesn't have any children, you know, I sometimes call our firm has been around a long time because our father was an attorney, and back when Hopkinton was a very small town, and there were many, many residents where they didn't have any family, and so it would be stepping in more as a surrogate, in his case, a surrogate son. You know, if the clients want to use me in that way, I can do it as long as I say to that client, I am more than willing to help you out, but I need to know what your instructions are, because all I am is an instrument carrying them out.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right. So it's really quite a relationship of trust that you're building up between your
Absolutely.
client and yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
They have to be
Yes.
comfortable with that relationship. And equally as important, though, we do strive to say, are there any other relatives who might be able to carry out that role? I see a big part of my job as laying out what the various roles are, what were the responsibilities for, and what that does for clients is starts to allow them to sort of fashion up or vision. You know, I never thought that my nephew Jim might be perfect for that role, might be the financial. My niece Callie, I never thought she would be responsible about making medical decisions. But they need to know just what the roles are if they're having trouble, and it's preventing them from starting a plan, having trouble to identify who should I appoint. And if they understand those roles, we often have a client with 2 children, and they haven't set about getting their plan because they're worried about, they don't want to offend either child. Well, there are some situations where the children could be appointed together depending on what the role is. So I see that education about what the various roles are of people who serve on or under your estate plan, and that education helps them start to make that forward step. Yes, I can see this person carrying out that function. Yes, I would be able to rely on that person to come with me to the medical appointments or what have you. But I think that education is really part of the big first step, because people are reluctant. They just are sometimes not comfortable choosing some person over another.
I think that's a very good idea, is to start thinking and asking, you know, my granddaughter would be excellent. She would be.
In a certain role.
That's right, in a certain role. And to make a care plan of, you know, of people, how they can help you. If you're in a nursing home, and would they come and visit you, and etc., and if you needed you know, something purchased, they would do it for you. But to give all this information to the lawyer, I think is very important, and about who's who and phone numbers.
Right.
And you know, I think it's very important. Estate planning. Okay, so the will is probably first.
I think if you look at estate planning, I think you really want to look at those 3 documents as part of a basic estate plan.
Okay.
Okay, the will, the healthcare proxy, the power of attorney, and now more and more, we're looking at making sure that they've got an adequate release document, so that the people you want to receive medical information about you, that they won't be precluded from not being able to get it. It's under that Health Insurance Portability Act.
Yes.
And so we're having our clients, after we've discussed it with them, sign a release authority, absolutely spelling out the people that they want to be able to get medical information about. Very important. Another part of basic estate planning that we've started to really talk to our clients about is a declaration of your preferences for not being artificially sustained. And I can tell you from some recent personal experience how important it is to let your family members, let whoever you believe you're going to designate as your agent, what are your preferences? Because their job is to only make the decisions you would make if you could make them yourself. And those, I call the living wills and the information release documents, I call them gifts to the family members, because they're already going to potentially be in an emotionally charged state, maybe in a waiting room at a hospital, being called upon by the medical community to make very hard decisions. And it can be a privilege to be designated as someone's healthcare agent, because the person who's appointing you has the confidence that you will pay attention to what they've said to you. this is how I'd like my care to be handled. Even down to, there are certain situations, you had said planning nursing home or medical emergencies in the hospitals. How about where you'd like your care? There are some people that say, I absolutely do not want to burden my family, and I'm fine with going to a skilled nursing facility. There are other people that say, if it's possible, I would like my advocate to carry out a plan that keeps me in my home as long as possible. And part of the elder lawyer's job is to also help people see that there are more financial options, assistance available for home care. You and I have been at this a long time. The expansion of community benefits for someone to get assistance in the home for home care, you know, it is exponentially more than we've ever had 25 years ago.
I know.
Agree? But again, think about what's important to you. If you just start there, what's important to me? It's important that my children know what I want. It's important that if I can't make a deposit or write a bill or call the insurance company, I want to make sure who that person is that would be standing in my shoes. If it's important that you want to directly benefit your grandchildren, the will or trust, very important, because you can make that happen. You can make that happen as long as you've properly got your documents, or your ducks, if you want to,
your ducks in order.
Your ducks in a row.
That's right. You know, because it's so important to be responsible, because we are responsible for ourselves. And if we waited, you know, when your spouse passes away, you know, you go into shock, you know, and so you really would feel so much better if this was done. You know, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
That's for sure.
And again, think the word, what do you want?
Yeah.
And think about it in the context of making gifts.
Yeah.
Even after you're gone, continuing to make a gift of having your affairs in order for the people who are going to be carrying out your administering your estate. So gift, and what do you want? And it will absolutely fall out. It'll make the discussion much easier with your own attorney. You know, any attorney that is going to work with you on an estate plan, one of their first questions will be, what is it that you want to accomplish by starting out this process of putting a plan together?
That's right.
And that's what drives it. What do you want? What do you want in place?
My word. Good. My word.
Okay?
Yes, yes indeed. And now you serve on the board at BayPath.
I do. I do. And BayPath has been extremely progressive in terms of the programs that there was not federal and state money for, the Medicaid money for home care, and they have been extremely, extremely progressive about opening up opportunities for people to get assistance, financial assistance, to pay for care workers in their home. And the assistance that we're talking about is beyond the traditional home care programs. And I think anyone that is investigating whether or not they can continue to live at home, or a family member investigating, that's where they really should start, as their local home care agency. And BayPath happens to be the one in our 14 town area. At the Cape, I deal with Elder Services of Cape Cod. They're also progressive. Their mission is to keep people at home. And now their mission is supported by another financial bucket of money through Medicaid. And it's been, in my experience, tremendously opportune for people who want to expand their home care help and stay at home. It's a tremendous
I'm glad
option.
they're doing that. Oh, because that's so important. A person wants to stay in their home as long as possible.
They do,
you know,
if it's safe.
Right, and you know, I was talking with somebody who works for seniors helping seniors, and you know, they just love it.
Yeah.
And you know, you feel secure. Gee, somebody's coming in next week. I'll be all right. I'm living alone. I don't drive, but 2 or 3 times a week, somebody from seniors, helping seniors,
Right.
will be coming in.
Right.
And it's just wonderful.
Right.
And it's caring for each other, which we're meant to do.
Absolutely.
You know, not everybody wants to go to a long-term placement area.
Nor need it.
That's right.
Think about what the SHINE program does for somebody's stress. You know, that stress can cause them to get ill.
That's right.
But with the SHINE workers who can take this pile of insurance matters and medical bills and just not knowing where to turn, or they get a renewal notice, or they've got to make an election on what health insurance to take. SHINE can help reduce that stress. So that's another example of what's out there.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
to take care of seniors and allowing them to live at home. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So a person who is going through all this, I mean, they could call the senior center and have an outreach worker come out and tell them,
Exactly.
you know, what is available and what your choices are.
Yep.
And then maybe contact BayPath, who would probably contact you. You know, in a lot of cases, when people ask for you, Kathy, you're so well known.
Oh, thank
Do you ever have time for yourself, Kathy?
I love what I do, so that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But it takes that hands-on advocacy. And again, it's a team. It's a team. But that advocacy is so critical.
Yes.
And once they know that there are people that can be part of the support for them,
Yes. It's
it
a
means
relief.
a huge relief.
Huge relief. Huge relief. That is just so
Absolutely.
wonderful.
Absolutely.
Because that's what it's meant to be.
Yep.
And,
Absolutely.
yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Oh, I'm telling you. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming in today.
Okay, and thank you for having me.
Oh.
All right.
And if it's all right, we'll put your phone number into the credits.
Surely.
Okay.
That'd be fine. That'd
Okay.
be fine.
And if a person has some questions, I'm sure you'd be willing to
Absolutely.
answer them.
Absolutely.
That's for sure.
All right.
That's
Thank
for
you
sure.
again for having me.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
And I hope that has helped you to just think about, you know, what do you want, you know, and what would make you feel better? Because once you start thinking about it and taking action on it, you're going to feel better and be at peace and have happiness, not worried stress, you know. So anyway, we want to thank you for watching, and you have a good night.
This show often talks to people who have interesting hobbies or careers or different things that they have going on that affect our community.
I'm Mary Arnott, your host.
There is a huge need for providing food for individuals and family.
And that's the key, is
yeah.
working well together.
You can see more episodes online at our website, hkim.tv.
Hi, I'm Tim Kilduff, and this is Business Matters. I think we got to talk a little bit about the history. I mean, you were born into something pretty special, weren't you?
Yeah.
The shop is a safe haven for a lot of people, young and old.
Business Matters is HCAM's show focusing not only on businesses in Hopkinton, but more importantly, the people who run and manage those businesses.
Just a minute, folks.
It's Dive-In Drive-In time, and we got a great western for you today.
Dive-In Drive-In is a new program featuring the HCAM staff's favorite B-movies. We hope you enjoy these treasured films of yesteryear.
And even if we don't get paid, there ain't no job we trade. We're hauling freight and safe to say no longer Santa Fe.
So check out the HCAM TV website at hcam.tv for movie days and showtimes.
Features share their art, followed by an open mic with people who come from near and far.
Think Jackson Pollock in monochromatic brown.
When the owls finally roost and small creatures can safely sleep, I can sleep too.
I sang with the master and danced for eternity in the light of the moon.
Then there's me.
Welcome to Hopkinton Coffee Break.
A very special dessert done by a woman from Hopkinton that I've started using regularly.
We had your residents participating both as vendors and as shoppers, and that was so much fun.
Real Hopkinton Housewives. If you're on Facebook, you will have a blast. Thanks for joining
Cheers, guys.
us. It's been a great.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
See you guys.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Peralt, host of the program Meet Your Neighbor on HCAM TV.
Kids got so much on their plate, and they're traveling here and they're traveling there.
You know, they still need help from time to time.
My father always was outdoors. I mean, he grew up, he had pet baby squirrels.
This show introduces you to Hopkinton residents, the many interesting people who are our neighbors, and we invite them to share stories, experiences, insights, and observations from their lives.
I'm Dr. Bruce Carlin. Welcome to Physician Focus.
A caregiver's burden can take people by surprise and seem overwhelming.
More than 1 in 3 Americans are living with prediabetes.
Complicated grief can increase the risk of physical and mental illness, substance abuse, and suicide.
Healthy eating promotes good health and reduces the risk for chronic illness.
People will get arm pain. About 80 to 90% of people have arm pain after the HPV vaccines.
Welcome to the Senior View. And today we have some very special guests who do some very special work.
We've done a lot of charity quilts. We've done quilts for veterans. We've done quilts for the Serenity House.
So we try to figure out what are your goals, what's your time frame, what's your motivation for moving, what's the situation with the house.
I love to be